And I appreciate the platform and everything that World System Solutions is doing. There's so much involved in the urgency of issues around the climate emergency and the climate crisis. And it's just great to have a platform that's collaborative and that includes every voice around the world because new innovation happens all the time, and new innovation is a product of platform. And so I've been fortunate enough, I live here in San Diego, California. I've been fortunate enough to be able to develop my education around architecture, design, real estate development, which really focuses on the creativity of the human experiences, creating spaces for people to inhabit that enhances their lives and makes for them to be able to have an envelope to be creative themselves. And that's evolved over time, started in residential development as a place to earn a living, and then kind of expanded what our team does into the commercial, industrial, and infrastructure that can be provided around the world. So our team is Ages Inc., Alternative Generating Energies and Sustainable Solutions. And what we've been doing over the past decade is really working on large-scale solutions to the climate emergency and finding examples of those and finding needs for those. And the needs that we've been looking at mostly here in our neighborhood are in Southern California. It started with really an understanding that San Diego Bay, Mission Bay, areas around where I live, the water quality based on stormwater issues create dead zones, which means eutrophication creates a system where fish can't survive. And a dead zone, it doesn't allow for a productive habitat. So our plan was to say, doing it in the Bay here in San Diego might be a challenge, but let's find the most challenging place in the world. And for us, that was the Salton Sea. Some people have heard of it, people haven't, but this whole region used to be the ancient Lake Cahuilla. I grew up in Palm Springs and Cathedral City area, which is by Indio. If you've heard of Coachella Fest, that's right next to the Salton Sea. A lot of people still camp around the Salton Sea during Coachella Fest. What is happening there now is we had a very large water transfer from Imperial Irrigation District to Coachella Valley Water District, Los Angeles Metro Water District, and San Diego County Water Authority. So that took some of this agricultural water, which they have a large allocation of, and transferred it to these other areas upstream. What that means is there's less water going into the sea, which means the shoreline is going to decline and already has declined. And the issue with that is there's particulate matter, which is very small, and it has a lot of cancer-causing material because agricultural practices over the last 100 years add different chemicals to that dust. When it's breathed in, it goes into your bloodstream. So they have people in the area getting cancer, or 17-year-olds needing lung transplants. So you're kind of in the worst case scenario. The salinity has gone up almost double the ocean water salinity. What did we want to bring to that? We wanted to bring solutions. Let's talk about the solutions. There can be positive impacts, low-cost impacts, and infrastructure that can help the state of California meet their goals for dust mitigation, can meet all the different stakeholders, but also including the people in that conversation. So what we developed was called Tres Mares, which is the 3 Cs. You have the Sea of Cortez, you have Laguna Salada, and you have the Salton Sea. And what we realized is that the restoration project that could be achieved here can also add water into the Colorado River Basin. So we're talking about the largest climate change project that can be developed in the United States, and it also benefits our neighbors in Mexico by building them a lake that's almost an equal size. Let's get started. What is the water cycle? You have ocean water, it evaporates, it falls as rain. Pretty simple idea, but that is the objective of this project. When there's less water in the Salton Sea, you go from 1.2 million acre-feet to 1 million acre-feet, and over the next 40 years, that gets down to hundreds of thousands of acre-feet. And what do we have right now in Lake Mead and Lake Powell? We have water shortages. So what we thought is, is there a cause and effect? And there actually is. The North American monsoon is what drives wind from south to north, and that's where most of the water comes into the Colorado River Basin. And we add more to that. If we can stabilize the shoreline of the Salton Sea, that's 1.2 million acre feet. We can add a lake, which is Laguna Salada, that's an additional 1.2 million acre feet. If we can add seawater agriculture systems around those two lakes, you can get to 4 million acre feet. And the total flow of water in the Colorado River Basin is 12 million acre feet, plus or minus every year. So you're talking about a quarter of the water being secured in perpetuity and maybe even adding water over time. What is the project? Not too complicated. It is simple, but it is also difficult to understand. I think this diagram does a really good job. You have high tides from the Sea of Cortez that come in. They're about 21 feet high or 7 meters. That pushes in and then flushes back out into the Colorado River Delta. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is Ramsar wetlands. But since there was an earthquake, it has died over the last 10 years because the whole plateau is now flat. Our project aims to restore that region by redirecting that high tide ocean water into Laguna Salada. We don't need any energy to pump the water in. You use high tides, and every month, more water will be pushed into a canal. You build a berm system so that it has a circulatory water filtration, so it doesn't get hypersaline in this lake over time. And then you have a blending of water that comes out so that this water is less salty than the water that's up here. That's not too hard, not too complicated. And then what happens after that to restore this lake is basically going downhill. You might have to go up 100 feet, or you can go up 30 feet, or you can go straight through with a tunnel, but it actually is advantageous to go up and drop down. The elevation of the Salton Sea is negative 232 feet, I think. So you're creating a lot of renewable hydropower going downhill, and you're able to store that energy, right? Pumped hydroelectric storage, you use solar to pump it high. When you need it at nighttime, you let the water fall. This basically does that without needing solar aquatic pumping systems, right? You basically have a big battery bank here. So this is kind of the design, a little bit about the financing, how much it costs, the different phases of it. Then we talk about the Salton Sea. Being able to do these things kind of in parallel is really important. Salton Sea restoration and Laguna Salada can kind of happen on their own permitting timelines, but also be in unison with the more difficult permit, which we have here, that is to connect those two water bodies. You have to go through every single agency in both federal governments of the US and Mexico, but you can kind of do those three things in parallel, which is really important. What does it look like, right? These are the berms that we're constructing with floating barges. So they can actually be a beautiful thing and function for recreation. And you can also add floating plants around them and plant these berms to clean up your water quality. We have a really comprehensive water quality management plan as well, which includes cleaning up the heavy metals that are there. That's an untreated issue across all spectrums of any other project that's looked at the Salton Sea. So that's a predominant effort of what we're trying to do is clean up. Most notably, selenium is very concentrated. But if you make selenium agriculture phytoremediation, you can sell those to other places. I'm not going to get too far into it. Our teams, we've worked with a few different ones. Andrea's on the call here. Blue Capital and Blue Fuels are the teams that we've been working with, and we make plastic and convert that into fuel to power our system. That's really exciting. Some of the projects that we can build also create jobs in the region and be at recycling facilities that are making the fuel for these developments. Really good friends of ours at Regenerative Resources, they take ocean water and make food and fuel and salt and any other kind of idea. And this is actually a concept that we were developing at the SURF workshop, which was focused on what does this system do when you scale it up to the global level. You know, we were talking specifically about Bangladesh, areas that are infiltrated with ocean water. These can be new farming systems for them. So really quickly, this is just an overall view of the project, the cost. $1 billion, plus or minus, that includes all of the water treatment systems that would be needed here, but the salinity of the Salton Sea would decrease significantly. So not only tilapia would survive there, but a whole spectrum of other fish can come back into the region. Quick overview. I'll send these slides so everybody can look at them in more detail. And this transition for me into this being a template. We talked about the Salton Sea being a template. Can we bring this same project to a place like Eastern Africa at the Danakil Depression? And that's what we ended up looking at and saying, hey, a project of this size could be deployed there. It's 6 times bigger for about a third of the cost. And so, this is just a template. This is another use case scenario of inland depressions being able to utilize ocean water to restore the water cycle. So we'll go into this a little bit, but this is Eritrea and Ethiopia and Djibouti. They're very, very dry areas all around this region, and they don't have a lot of export. Djibouti in particular imports most of their food product. So bringing systems like this can really help these communities be independent and be regenerative, where they're exporting new supplies. This just talks about the energy carbon emission cycle and how those interplay with creating renewable energy, creating water, creating food. This kind of is very similar to our project, Tres Matas at the Salton Sea, because most of the monsoonal wind blows right over the specific region that we're looking at. So it's a acupuncture point, if you want to use that example. If you pin these two places, they're the most productive places to create and enhance evaporation. Looking at water cycles for the whole basin. Everybody's probably heard of the Great Green Wall Project. We really wanted to take an approach of $360 million to restore the Danakil Depression. That could build the Great Green Wall without ever having to use the traditional sense, a shovel, right? You're creating the wind patterns and the rain patterns that create the proliferation of landscape naturally. And really the biggest part of all of this is the financing mechanism, is utilizing the carbon credits, be able to fund these projects and build them and expand them in other places around the world. So you can kind of see here, this is the Danakil Depression, but you have a big mountain ranges and all of the water. So if you're evaporating a lot of water, it hits the mountains, it falls as rain, and it can expand into all the tributaries, including the Nile River. Soil composition, boring stuff. That's the project. Dig a small canal, connect it to the ocean, right? Not too expensive. Kind of see a map overlay, looking at a little bit more boring stuff. Again, I'll send these images to everybody later. But so that's kind of the gist of what our projects are. I have these 2 videos that I kind of shared already. This is the Tres Matas project, future vision of that. I'll also include a current plan that would just show the basic infrastructure, not the overall master plan. And then we also included a couple other videos to get to the bare example of being able to look at these things as beautiful opportunities, right? It's not just the doom and gloom of climate change, is that sea level is rising. What can we do with ocean levels that are rising? Can we use that in inland depressions? Can we make new food and fuel systems from that rising ocean and create economic opportunities for the people that live in those areas? So during the surf workshop, I got to work on my calculator. I'm saying, like, how many arid landscapes are deserts around the world? And it's like 1.3 billion hectares. That's a lot of area. If you start to calculate these seawater agriculture farms on all of that area, and we have AI as an assistance that can help us with that, you can really closely get to saying that if you built these seawater agricultural systems all around the world, we might be able to A, drink up sea level rise, B, create microclimates in all of those regions that reverse desertification, and C, create independent economies of new entrepreneurs that are able to take those developments, operate them, and expand them. So you're giving technology to communities that don't currently have import export. They're dependent on the government giving them certain handouts, right? We kind of look at this as a hand up program. And I mean, I don't want to be too facetious, but I really see this as a border restoration and immigration plan. So what I would really like to say is this could be one of those areas where you have this border zone where people are able to live there for a year on one side of the border, create some of these economic opportunities for themselves. And then if they'd like to still seek asylum or transition to the United States, do that on the other side of the border. Then you have a comprehensive immigration and asylum process that's fair, but we might realize that some people don't want to come to the US. They just needed a safe place that has economic opportunities. And then those technologies start expanding back to where they come from in Ecuador and Venezuela, or some of the island communities that are devastated by climate change. We're going to have a lot of refugees. And the point being is that A, you need to house them, B, you need to feed them, and C, they need fuel to get there. So if you're creating food and fuel systems that burn 50% cleaner, right? We're already triggering down nearly 50 to 60% of global climate emissions if you build these farms everywhere. So that's what I'm really thinking about, how we get these first demonstrations off the ground, how we get them to a place where people want to not only see them, but want to experience them, and how they would do that. We could talk about that. I can leave these in the background that kind of show just a little bit more about what they are while we kind of have this discourse. Because I didn't mean to talk over anybody. If you have any questions, always feel free to interrupt me. But I think now's a good time. Maybe we do Q&A, and I'll just kind of leave these in the background so we can kind of imagineer together. So thank you for your time. This is Ages Inc. We're a collaborative team. We're always looking for new partners. Our group is really focused on saying that no projects have to be one technology, one team. Ours is not a small group where we don't want to expand, and we don't want to bring in new innovative thinkers into the process. And that's kind of the whole goal, is from architects, engineers, right, farmers. Our goal is to try and get these first projects off the ground and start building them. The first seawater ag farm was actually close to here in Djibouti. Oh, I'm sorry, in Eritrea about 30 years ago. So we're really excited to build another one here in Mexico and build them in other places with our partners at Regenerative Resources. So let's open that to questions. Feel free, ask anything, everything, and we're always looking for innovation.